That cold case you're listening to? Nasty stuff. But you know what else is a crime? Missing even a moment of whatever you're doing to go on a drink run. Luckily, there's Drizzly, the #1 app for alcohol delivery. With Drizzly, you can compare prices on the biggest selection of beer, wine, and spirits, then get them delivered in under 60 minutes. So download the Drizzly app or go to drizzly.com. That's DRIZLY.com today.
Without a healthy mind, being truly happy and at peace is hard. The good news is therapy works. But what is therapy exactly? It's whatever you want it to be. Maybe you're not feeling motivated right now and would like some tools to help. Or maybe you're feeling insecure in relationships or at work, not dealing well with stress. Whatever you need, it's time to stop being ashamed of normal human struggles and start feeling better because you deserve to be happy. And now you don't have to worry about finding an in-person therapist near you to help. BetterHelp is customized online therapy that offers video, phone, and even live chat sessions with your therapist, so you don't have to see anyone on camera if you don't want to. It's much more affordable than in-person therapy, and you can start communicating with your therapist in under 48 hours. Join the millions of people who are seeing what online therapy is really about. It's always a good time to invest in yourself because you are your greatest asset. And a special offer to ImmaLetYouFinish listeners, you can get 10% off your first month of professional therapy at betterhelp.com/ImmaLetYou, ImmaLetYou. That's betterhelp.com/ImmaLetYou, ImmaLetYou. Thanks again to BetterHelp for sponsoring this podcast.
What's up, everybody? It's ImmaLetYouFinish with Court and Amy on the Pantheon Podcast Network. It's show number 114, and we have a special guest today. It is a conversation with a man who, pretty legendary, has a great story to tell.
Just go with it, all right? Just roll with it.
Has seen some things, has done some things, has been a session studio drummer for Samantha Fox. How the hell did that happen? It is Hugo Burnham from Gang of Four.
Yeah, only Courtney could lead with Samantha Fox and then work your way.
Because when I read everything and think about Gang of Four, it's like, yes, I would really think that person would end up being a session drummer for Samantha Fox, who is the complete opposite of everything.
Well, that is absolutely true, and there is a fun story behind it, if I may.
Please.
After I'd left Gang of Four, I was doing some sort of trying to do session work, but I'm really not that good a drummer to be able to just go in and read charts and do all that sort of thing. And I actually joined a band for a while called Illustrated Man with Rob Dean, the guitar player from Japan, who remains a dear friend. And Roger Mason, who had been playing with Gary Newman and with the Models, Australian band, and an Australian bass player called Phil. And after that, I sort of transitioned myself, as it were, over to tour management and management. And I was looking after Shriekback. As well as working with my brother Jolyon, who had also gone into management through tour management. He was looking after Neil Arthur from Blancmange and Julian Cope. But anyway, I got a call from, I can't remember who it was, but it was basically Public Image Management, who said, hey, we're going to be on Top of the Pops next Thursday. Would you like to be on? And it's like, would I? So it was Rise, and the one that Ginger Baker actually recorded. But Bruce Smith, who then stayed with the band, and I were both drumming on Top of the Pops for Public Image. And it was wonderful. I have a small suspicion they called me originally, not knowing who I was, but they called Shriekback Management because I think they probably wanted Martin Barker originally. But I stole
But it was alphabetical. They went down the list.
Yeah, I yeah, very good. I stole it from under him, and I was fabulous. And then a week later, I got a call from a friend who'd run the little studio that we used to write and rehearse in, who had just finished writing and producing most of Samantha Fox's first album. And he said, "Oh, I saw you on there with Public Image. Brilliant." Which in itself is a whole thing, because Gang of Four got kicked off Top of the Pops some years before that. And he said, "I got another really cool one for you." He said, "It's Samantha Fox." And I just went, Public Image to Samantha Fox within 3 weeks. I'm in. I am in.
Right.
It was great fun because I actually spent probably the next 6 months working with her, doing TV shows, going to Europe. They treated me very well. She was lovely and charming. And her dad, an old, sort of bruiser cab driver guy, always paid me on time, and they paid me properly. And that was highly unusual.
We love that.
So that was it. Yeah. And then I did, after that, I was on Top of the Pops again with ABC with their second.
Wait, stop. Discuss.
Okay, so their second album, that was then, but this is now.
One of my favorite songs ever. And when I worked at the Baby Doll Lounge as a bartender, I always have to stress that as a bartender, I took over the jukebox because I couldn't listen to Flashdance one more fucking time. And there was a whole contingent of girls who danced at the Baby Doll who were kind of downtown kind of chicks. Their boyfriends were musicians, so somebody had to have a job, and so they were strippers. Yeah. So I took over the jukebox, and that was then. This is that. I had that thing on repeat. I used to play, and you have to be a certain kind of dancer to dance to that song.
Yeah. Well, we all know what a stripper does with her asshole before she goes to work.
She says goodbye to him.
Drops him off at band practice, yeah. Anyway, I digress. Our original manager, Rob Waugh, who'd left us and gone to work for EMI and then became ABC's manager. I can't remember which way around it was. But they had lost David Palmer. It was just down to the other three with the band now. And they wanted somebody to drum on Top of the Pops. And it started with the video for That Was Then, But This Is Now, all of which can be found on YouTube. And so I turned up to do it, and they were like, wow, you really learned the song. You're not just, it's important to look fabulous when you're on television.
Yeah.
And I did, again.
And especially
look fabulous, or
especially Top of the Pops is literally everybody in the UK watched it. Everyone watched Top of the Pops. It was appointment television.
Absolutely, families. It was part of the whole zeitgeist at the time. And I went on with them. I went to Australia and Japan, doing TV shows and stuff. And when we did American Bandstand, it was the week of Christmas, I think, that year. He comes out and says hello to everybody. What do you want for Christmas? What do you want? And then he says, "What about you back there?" And of course, the three main banders, "He's just a fucking drummer. Ignore him."
Right.
He said, "What would you like for Christmas?" And I said, "Oh, I'd like that jacket of Mark's," which was some Issey Miyake thing that cost a fortune. Cracked everybody up. So anyway, and there was another story about. Oh yes, when we did Top of the Pops the first time, there's a band who weren't very big in the States, a staple of the English music scene for years, a band called Status Quo.
Oh, I know of, but have never heard them. But I know of. Yeah,
well, they were heads down, no nonsense, mindless boogie. I mean, they were fantastic.
Are they Pictures of Matchstick Men? Is that them?
Yeah, that was their very early pop hit, and then they sort of got heavier and more boogie-fied, and they had quite a reputation for partying. So anyway, we went into their dressing room, hello, and the three boys in ABC were just all quite excited, and I was right into the corner there with. Anyway, participating. And I said, "Who are you then?" I'm Hugo. He said, "Well, what do you do?" "I'm the drummer." He said, "Oh, you're D then." C, D. Okay, you had to be there. But anyway, I had a lot of fun pretending to miming drumming with some really fun artists, and it kept my mortgage going at the time.
Are any of those shows live at all? They're all I know Dick Clark is live because we grew up with that one. Yeah, I mean, it's not live, Dick Clark. I know that.
It went through various stages with Top of the Pops. I think they tried it live. There were a lot of musicians' union rules. Like, you couldn't just play the record and mime to it. You had to officially go and re-record the track so that you get be paid by the union and all that sort of thing. And that was a whole part of the story of why Gang of Four got kicked off. But yeah, you played along. It was fun.
How is it that some people got to perform live on that show? Because there are some performances where people did get to perform live on Top of the Pops. I know
think
it was rare, just a few people.
Yeah, I think it was more to do with the timing of what they were trying to do production-wise, that they tried it for a while or once or twice, but it was always, they couldn't control it. And which is why we got kicked off, because when right after we signed to EMI, we put out At Home He's a Tourist for our first single. The line is, "And the rubbers you hide in your top left pocket."
Oh, yeah.
They'd asked us to be on, and we were in Wales rehearsing before we recorded Entertainment at this old sort of hippie farmhouse. And we had a long debate about whether we should be on Top of the Pops or not. And our A&R guy, Chris Briggs, and our manager, Rob Waugh, were being very patient, in their heads, just going, "What the fuck are you doing? We have to do this."
Right.
But so anyway, they said, "Well, we can't have you say the word rubbers. You need to change that." And we thought, well, okay, let's be pragmatic about it. So we said, "Yep, we'll go and re-record it. We'll say rubbish, bugger." That ruined the story. We'll say packets.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
We did. We went there. They decided they, for some reason, didn't like us very much. And no, you've got to change it to rubbish. Mm-hmm. Why? Well, then it won't sound like we made you change it. And they said, yeah, but that completely changes the meaning. And so we stood our ground. And as John King has said a number of times, we never missed an opportunity to miss an opportunity. And we really lost EMI Records over that.
Wow.
Because they really saw us as being a big coming thing, and walking off to the Pops to their promotions department, that was akin to cutting your own arm off.
But you did Oh Grey Whistle Test, right? Was that like a looser show? Was that a looser show?
Yeah, that was the late night sort of rock show,
Okay, so you could, I remember so vividly as a young punk rocker in San Francisco, that whole controversy about the rubbers and the rubbish thing. Because, at the time we had heard of you guys, and you rushed down to Tower Records to get the import because it was only available on import at that point. And it was just it really like made an impact in terms of like controversy. And it was like a big deal thing. And it's so, obviously now it's like nothing. It's like absolutely nothing.
God, I mean, back then, it was a terrible thing. Now it's like parents are throwing condoms at their kids when they go out.
It's like, please use this. Please use this. I'm begging of you. I just want to talk a little bit. Well, I guess talk about Gang of Four, because there's this book that just came out, which I tried to get in my library, but they don't have it yet. The No Machos or Pop Stars, which is about the scene in Leeds. And I think for a lot of us, or I'll speak for myself, we always associated everything with music and punk with London. I mean, we were just sort of, everything was centered around London, and you are not from London.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so the band's hometown was Leeds, although three of us were all from southeast London. We grew up in Kent. We went to public school there. Public, of course, meaning private. I went to one place in Kent, and John and Andrew and half of the Mekons all went to high school at another town, probably 12 miles away from where I did, even though I didn't know them. But we all gathered in Leeds. They were all studying fine art. I was doing English and theatre. There was so much going on in Manchester and Liverpool and Leeds and Birmingham. I mean, there was a lot going on. But yeah, London was the genesis of everything. So I understand that.
Was there a different kind of mentality that you guys brought? Because, being New Yorkers, New Yorkers think that we're the center of the world, and we're obviously not. But, we did invent punk rock, obviously. But,
well, I mean, things spread far more quickly there, obviously, because you can have something in New York that's going for 2 or 3 years before Cleveland gets to hear about it. Or, more to the point, that until New York hear that Cleveland are doing it, for instance, Mm-hmm. But you can be up and down the country in 4 hours in England, 5. Or 4 the way we drove, and it moved faster. The book is it's actually being released. I think the publication date, in the States is next week sometime, because the author Gavin Butts, who's been working on this for years, we all interviewed some time ago, and I thought, it's never going to come out, and then suddenly it's out. he's doing a talk in New York. He's some interview thing with the book release that I'm actually going to drive down for next week to be at with him. And then in another 2.5, 3 weeks, I'm actually flying to England because there's a big event in Leeds. There's a gig with Mekon 77, the original lineup, and Scritti Politti.
We just talked about Scritti Politti.
Oh my God.
Really.
And we go deep in the catalog. We're not just Perfect Way. All right.
Yeah,
like,
right.
you know, like, I mean, Bonamy and Anami are like,
Okay, so they're doing a gig at the big pub venue, you know, the major venue in Leeds, which is just a big pub.
right.
To go with the release, and there's a release party. So I'm flying into London. I take the train, assuming the buggers are running, to Bath, where John King lives now, and I'll spend the night there. We'll hang out, and then we'll drive up to Leeds the next day and both be at the event. I'm DJing it. John says, I'm not going to do anything. I just want to be there. Although he's then doing an event with the author in London a week or so later. So it's great. I've read it. It's a very thoroughly well-written, thoroughly researched book that's not just a pop tome at all. It's really good.
Well, maybe when I have to send you my number because you were literally 5 blocks. He was at the Pet Shop Boys show too, the same one we were at.
Was so good.
That was so good.
Did
Did you go to see Pet Shop Boys or New Order? Who'd you go to see? Who'd you go to see?
Well, I went to see them both. I've never seen Pet Shop Boys.
You and Courtney broke your Pet Shop Boys cherry on the same night. That's exciting. Yeah.
Love them.
Number 5 for me.
I mean, sort of fun. I mean, I was sort of nominally New Order's A&R man when I was at Quest Records in Los Angeles because Quincy had signed them. So, you know, and I'd known them when they were Warsaw pre-Joy Division. They opened for us once, if not twice. So, known them a long time. Hooky and I are old and good friends, which they are not with him anymore.
I was going to say, such good friends that he wasn't on the tour.
Oh no, I mean, no, he and I are friends.
Right.
They had a most awful breakup, but you know, par for the course in this business. I actually enjoyed Pet Shop Boys more because live, the best part of New Order for me is Stephen, the drummer, because he's great to watch.
Phenomenal drummer.
When my seats were, there was this huge lighting gantry literally between me and Stephen. So I just had to look at the screen, and so that was a little disappointing. But had a fabulous dinner before that, about 10 minutes.
Where? Where'd you go?
I know you're going to say, I can't remember. It's a place that just opened fairly recently. It's like a real old school Brooklyn restaurant with this fabulous bar upstairs. Oh God, I can't remember.
Gage and Tollner?
Yes, Gage and Tollner. Fabulous.
Gage and Tollner has been around since the 1800s, but that's okay. I know.
It was closed for a very long time. And
it was always the place when you were going out with your grandmother, right? You would go to Gage and Tollner because there was something for everybody, and all the waiters had little hatch marks, like little stripes for how long they had been working there.
Wow.
And they had the gas. Do they still have the gas lanterns?
It looks like it, even though they're
not. Yeah. You know that was a Wendy's. Remember, Courtney, when the Fulton Mall went to shit and they sold the building. It was a Whiz. It was the Whiz for a while. And then they turned it into it's pathetic.
I used to work at the Whiz. Fun fact.
Yeah, and it was an Arby's or a Wendy's, but because the building is landmark, so it was like a Wendy's with gas lighting inside.
Well, recently restored and fabulous. I will go back there. But
I have a question for you. So,
cheers.
Gang of Four, you guys are really important in the punk scene. What do you think your relevance and place is in the history of the punk scene?
Oh, God.
Really.
And go.
I always prefer other people to say these things. I mean, okay, we're very lucky because we didn't start the thing. We started during the punk times. We sort of started coming out through in the period they called post-punk because it wasn't all about the zits and the spiky hair so much for us. And just because we were just a bit more sort of arty and serious, really. and which is not in any way to disparage all the great early punk stuff that was just fantastic. I mean, inspiring, exciting. So where do we sit with it? I mean, well, people are still listening to us. People still talk to us and discover us, and sometimes lose their minds when the maitre d' at Gage and Tolda almost fell over when somebody told him who I was.
Well, that's comforting in a
love
way.
It means I can get a seat in the future. I can get a seat at the bar.
Yeah, you can get like a cocktail.
Yeah.
Well, I can tell you. All right. So having seen you in 1980, so when you did your first U.S. tour, I saw you in San Francisco. That may be the last.
How did you get in? I mean, 12-year-olds getting into clubs?
Yes, my mom took me, and I sat on her shoulders.
Yeah.
Actually, a roommate of ours bought me and my first ex-husband. Courtney always head explodes when I say the first ex-husband.
Whenever you say that, I'm always like, right, there was a first ex-husband.
But it was a green card marriage. But he was my husband. But he was a green card marriage. And all the little punks were going. We were going to see the Buzzcocks. That was the big, we had heard of you guys, but but the Buzzcocks. And our roommate, who then killed himself by setting himself on fire, but that's a whole nother conversation. I mean, punk rock. He bought the tickets for us, and they were the extraordinary, like they were $7 or something insane, like, oh my, outrageous, at the Temple Beautiful, where we usually got in for free at the Temple Beautiful, but it was not one of his shows. It wasn't one of Paul Ratt's shows. Anyway, blah, 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 blah. We went to the show, and like you guys came on, and we were all like, oh, I guess we do have to sit through the band that we want to see, but everybody was just like blown away. And if you were to ask me now, what part of the longevity? I mean, the politics definitely, though Americans were oblivious to those kind of politics. We don't know anything about that stuff. But I really do think, and I'm coming from someone who's an R&B girl who grew up, on R&B and stuff. You guys had a groove. Punk rock was not a groove music. There wasn't it was great, but there wasn't a lot of undulating you could do to punk rock.
I mean, that's the stuff we collectively gathered about. It wasn't just punk rock. I mean, we, being English, of course, we all had reggae as a significant thing in our musical DNA. We all had listened to and dug, whether it was Hendrix or Can or Parliament Funkadelic and Motown. I mean, James Brown, the Meters. I mean, it's just, you heard these things and that was it. It was just, we did that. That's some of the things that drew us together. That and a band called Free, who were completely blues rock. And
Paul Kossoff, Free?
Yeah. Who had such a groove and so minimalist about it as well, which is another thing that we want to do. But I remember that show so well because that's one of the shows that is probably one of the top 5 or 10 of all time because it was one of the hottest days of the year.
It was hot, yeah.
The guy DJing the show was an old BBC DJ.
Johnny Walker. It was Johnny Walker.
I'd grown up listening to, and it's like, we're just sitting there before sound. I heard this voice. It's like, so, and I said, fuck me, you're Johnny Walker. It's like, great. So, and he always came to our shows back in those days as well. We became quite friendly. But, I mean, when I was in high school doing summer jobs, I used to work on farms. And I remember this one summer when I was working on a pig farm, I'd sit having my sandwich for lunch. It was about the same time as he was serializing Harry Nilsson's The Point on the radio, on Radio 1. So, yeah. I mean,
is he still alive? And I'm not saying that to be creepy. I mean, is he still around?
Johnny Walker?
Yeah.
I have no idea. Obviously not Harry Nilsson.
Harry Nilsson, I know.
I've no idea. But
Courtney, I have to give you a heads up. I'm suddenly like set adrift on memory bliss here right now.
I love it because whenever we have these conversations,
I mean, that was the one where Grill Marcus first saw us and confessed to walking out, but he went to see the Buzzcocks, but said, I can't do it after that. I can't see anybody else.
No, it was and then I saw you guys at the American Indian Center.
Oh yeah. That was in the beginning of 1980 when we toured with the album that had just come out on Warner's. That was a Ken Friedman show.
That's when I got thrown down the steps with Will Shatter. Ken threw us down the steps, but I digress.
I find it amazing that you can remember all of these shows because I know
you're talking about him.
Yes, he's just like, yes, that was just. I'm thinking about all the shows I've been to with artists and all of the places, and people are like, don't you remember we were there? I'm like, I saw that. They're like, yes, you were there. I'm like, I don't remember.
I have to give it that you remembered the San Francisco show because that was your first U.S. tour, right? I mean, that was the first time
you played. Summer of '79. We left like 4 or 5 days after we finished recording Entertainment and came back 4 or 5 days before we had our first major UK tour on the back of Entertainment. So, I mean, we never really stopped back then.
No, because I saw that show and then I interviewed you guys in San Jose, I think, and in some club. And what I remember so distinctly, I apologize, Courtney, was that Dave Allen says to me, "Oh, I just got over the chicken pox," and I'm like, "Get away from me," because I've never had the chicken pox. And I just remember being like, great. I said, but I might get celebrity chicken pox. That would be really fucking cool.
Yeah.
Post-punk chicken pox. That would be good,
Yeah. Some of the other founding members.
You can call it any name you like.
You and the other founding members recently went out on the road, right? So how was that experience? What was the reception like from the fans?
Well, 2 of the very original members went out. Then the first replacement joined us, basically. So John King and we took Sarah Lee on bass and a new guitar player, which was obviously something we needed. David Parho from Slint and Yeah Yeahs and God knows. I mean, he is a guitar god. He was fantastic. And those were very big and difficult shoes to fill, but all I can say is Dave Parho has big feet.
Right.
So,
nice.
We had planned that, John and I, because we really did John principally, but I was his lieutenant, with the box set that came out on Matador. That was a year and a half work and we thought, right, we're going to go out on tour. And I mean, without getting into the depth of it, we had all fallen out very significantly with Andy Gill. When John left the band in 2012, he said to Andy, please go out, play, tour, but don't go out as Gang of Four because it's just you. Call yourself the Andy Gill Experience. Anything, but it's not Gang of Four. It was one thing when there was just the 2 of them, okay. And I used to go and see them when they came into Boston because, old friends. But Andrew then spent the next 7 or 8 years touring as Gang of Four with 3 people. And it upset John, and Andrew went further and further into a sort of Pravda-like rewriting history about everybody's participation in the creation of the band and the development of the band. It was just sort of nasty. So we thought, well, we're going to go and do it and maybe reclaim it a bit. And we'd actually found another guitar player, a woman from a band called Screaming Females down in New Jersey or Philadelphia somewhere, Marissa, who was phenomenal, just great. Because, probably not very woke of me to say this, but John and I said, we want to find somebody really good, but we cannot have another old white guy in this band. It's not the right thing. It would have been easy to pick anybody who once played with the Chili Peppers, for instance, but just not very interesting.
That would never be a good move.
Well, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Marissa was fantastic, but it sort of fell apart a bit because just for whatever reason, and Dave was unable to continue playing with us after. Well, then COVID hit, and then Andrew died, and the drama around that was extraordinary. But it did actually clear the way for us to do it again, do it properly.
Come back together, right.
Well, and it was the first Gang of Four tour that wasn't really dominated by a mixture of sort of narcissism and alcoholism. And it was a lovely, lovely tour. We had what's known as a good bus. It was the 4 of us, our sound man, Frank Gallagher, who did for years, Talking Heads, B-52. I mean, he's done everybody. He's really old, but damn good. And Patrick Ferguson, a dear old friend of mine from a band called 5/8 in Athens, who I almost signed probably 25, 30 years ago, but stayed a good friend. He came out as our crew. and a woman doing our merch from Asheville, North Carolina, who was fabulous. So the first 4 or 5 shows we did with that team in the bus, and for the first shows we got somebody local, a friend, to come and sing background, so we could do a couple of those songs like "I Love a Man in Uniform" and things like that. And then when we had Mary from 10,000 Maniacs in the first show, that was lovely. And then when we got to Boston, there was a young woman who'd had to audition for us back in January when we were rehearsing up here, called Tess Burnham, my daughter.
I was going to say,
Yeah,
like,
she,
how unusual.
well, yeah, but she did, I mean, seriously had to audition. I mean, and I told her, look, I'd love you to do this, but you got to earn it. And she did. She was fabulous. She joined us during her spring break of her last year as a musical theatre major. And then another old friend, Dolette MacDonald from Talking Heads and The Police, and oh God, I mean, she was one of the 20 Feet from Stardom.
I was going to say, I know that
singers.
name. I know
Yeah, no,
that
she's
name.
one of those like tried and true session singers.
right.
Yeah,
And she'd retired from singing like 15 or more years ago.
she's in Stop Making Sense, Courtney. She's in. She's the one of the 3 women in the singers in Stop Making Sense.
She's an old friend, and when I said, she said, I want to come and see you. I don't know whether to come to New York or Atlanta because they live down in Georgia. And I said, well, come to both. I said, well, Tessie's going to be singing. She said, I want to come and sing. I will come to New York and I will stay with you till Nashville, which is when Tessie had to leave and go back to school, which she really didn't want to do. Oh, Dad, can I stay? No, you're like,
You're going back
I've
to
been paying
school.
tuition for 4 years. You're damn well going to finish, girl. So they were fabulous together. Tessie had such a masterclass singing with Dolette, and it was just glorious. It was a great bus. And then when they left in Nashville, we picked up a band who's sort of based in LA, but sort of in Austin. 3 women who joined us, 2 of whom sang with us. And we just said to them, well, instead of renting a car and doing all that sort of thing, give us the money you're going to spend on a car, come on the bus with us, and we will make room for you by renting a trailer. And that way everyone's in the same vehicle and we're safe and nobody's getting lost. And that worked really well as well. It was fabulous. So we had a consistent opening act for that second half of the tour, which is good for everybody in the crew.
How was the audience reception?
Sorry?
How was the audience reception?
Over the top, from what I.
Again, sounds like it's all faint praise to myself, but fantastic. People say, oh, which was your favorite show? And it's like, I really can't tell because they were all stunning. Everybody. And again, like when we did the original reunion in 2005, there were young people and old people.
Well, you were playing because I saw those shows at the 2005 shows. Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That was the very original lineup with
Right.
me and Dave and John and Andrew. So, the shows were all good. When we left, we were on the verge of maybe breaking even. And I mean, it was tense because the COVID thing, luckily we caught a bit of a lull in COVID. Lots of people came out. We had lots of rules about what we were going to do, which we just were not cavalier about, but nobody came on the bus, nobody came backstage, but we actually went out after the show. We went to talk to people. We went to the merch table, and people were just thrilled. It's like, oh, thank you for coming here, and thanks for coming out. And we sold a ton of merch and sold out a lot of shows, and came home with a bit of money, which was very nice because had we not, it would have been disastrous because there was quite a lot of money at stake.
How did you make the move into A&R? I mean, how did you go into A&R? Because, coming from your background, then you go into the belly of the beast for sure. I mean, once you're working in A&R.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when Gang of Four signed to EMI instead of an indie label back in the day, we were going to the belly of the beast because that's where you can have most effect, I think. So it wasn't. And when I was with the band, when we weren't working, I spent a lot of time, whether it was in London or New York, hanging out at the agent, hanging out at the record company, hanging out with the management, because I just I wanted to listen and learn and see what was going on and all this sort of thing. So it wasn't that far of a stretch. I moved to New York in the summer of '88. I'd been doing management, as I said earlier, in partnership with Jolyon, my brother. And I was just spending a lot of time in New York, going back and forward because Shriekback was signed to Island in the States. And I was tired of London. So I moved to New York and spent a lot of time at Island Records. And within 2 months of being there, the head of A&R offered me a job doing A&R there. And I just, fabulous. I took it. My first regular paycheck since getting £30 a week when Gang of Four signed a record.
Plus, that's the dream. That's like the dream label. That's the label. Like,
well, it was. I mean, we were devastated when Gang of Four signed with EMI. Every major label was after us. One of the original big bidding wars, except Island, which was the one we really wanted.
The one you really wanted.
So it was a sort of, okay, this is good. And I was there for 2 years. I was there for Chris Blackwell's last year before he sold it to Polygram. And then the first year that it was owned by Polygram, that he was still there, but sort of as emeritus.
That's actually a big to be. That is the dynamic shift of Island Records. Because those early years, I mean, the albums they put out, the singles they chose to put out, the artists they chose to sign.
Everything.
It was interesting. It was downtown. It was New York. It was sexy. Some of it was hard. Some of it was, all of the Grace Jones stuff. And then they had 4th and Broadway that went through there. And
that's where the label was at 4th.
You were 4th and Broadway,
of Tower Records. So it was a fabulous place to be. And then I'd signed an act originally called Pleasure Head, and then they changed it to Pleasure Lords. And they were a great hard rock band with great songs. But, and the drummer was Paul Ferguson from Killing Joke, who is to this day remains one of the few drummers I'm really scared of. He's so good. And the guitar player was John Carruthers, who played with Clock DBA and I think spent some time with the Banshees as well. So it was a fun thing. And we made a record, and then there was a big change in A&R. The guy who hired me left, and Denny Cordell came in, and he dropped my band before the record was finished. But anyway, so that really was not. Cut a long story short, I then went to work for a new label called Imago, which was Terry Ellis, one of the founders of Christmas.
That was another really good label.
They had such interesting artists on Imago.
Yeah.
There were some good artists.
They got shitted on too because whoever was distributing them kind of cut them off.
BMG. Yeah. There were problems. It was a lot of fun. Kate Hyman was the head of A&R who hired me there and then fired me 18, 19 months later. Because they'd sent me out to LA to open and run the West Coast office, which I'd done, and I found this building and I oversaw everything and we were having a good time. And then Kate sort of hit a moment in her life where she wasn't very sure of things.
We can have this conversation offline.
No, well, it was not happy or good at all. But, I've since, fairly soon after that, I made a big point of making up with Kate because what's the point?
Yeah.
So
it's a small world.
Yeah, it is. Well, just, I'm not really nasty. But what had happened 10 days before she came to LA and told me she didn't want me working there anymore, an old friend, Jim Swindell, who'd been head of sales, VP of sales at Island, had gone on. He then had gone on with Phil Q to Virgin to run that, but then had been given the job as the president of Quest Records, Quincy Jones's label at Warner Brothers. And he called me and said, "Hey, I got this new gig. It's great, but we got some good people here. But Quincy really wants to expand and get more into sort of rock music. So I'm looking for an A&R person. You got any ideas?" So I went through all these ideas, and he went, "Oh, for Christ's sake, Hugo, I'm asking if you want to come and do it." I said, "Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, look,
you're suggesting everybody else under the sun.
Right. I said, "I'm flattered. Oh, man, that's lovely, Jim, but they've been so good to me at Imago, and I don't want to flit around." 10 days later, I called him and said, "Jim, is the job still available?" So I ended up at Quest for 3 years, which was again great because I was back in the Warner Brothers fold where Gang of Four had been. Being Warner Brothers back then, it was mostly all the same people, which was fabulous. Some really good people there. I signed three or four acts, which were all really good, but nobody had a hit. We nearly had a couple. And then from there, I went to EMI Music up on Sunset. I was there for 2 years. And again,
Well, lots of A&R get places that you were actually signed to.
Well, yeah, I know. Yeah, I know. But like it was back then, I mean, there was so much turnover all the time because, as soon as a new boss came in, I had to bring their people in.
Oh, every time.
By the time that happened at EMI, I sort of got tired of it all. And my wife at the time, Tess's mum, who'd been a publicist at Island and Virgin and Scotty Brothers, and she'd run her own thing, and she was at the time VP of publicity for Capricorn, working for Phil Walden. And we thought, well, and Phil said, well, come down to Atlanta because I'm moving up from wherever they were. Yeah. And that fell apart. Phil Walden, God. So it's like, I mean, we were about to put in an offer on a house in 4 Points or 5 Points or whatever it's called in Atlanta.
5 Points, yeah, a little 5 Points.
Mike Bone, who'd been the president of Island, where Carol and I had been working when Polygram bought it, he was there, and he called and said, have you put that off in the house yet? And I said, no. He said, don't. What? He said,
which
no
is a phone call and no one was. What do you mean don't? It's like nothing good is coming behind that.
Well, have you found something better? So anyway, when that fell apart, we'd already sold the house in LA, which to this day I love that. It was probably my favorite house, other than the one I'm in now. It was great. So we just drove back to Massachusetts, where Carol's family was, thinking, okay, we'll just winter here and then see what happens next. And what happened next was we just never left. And
wait a minute, who winters in Massachusetts? You're supposed to. It's the other way around, dude.
I know. Well, yeah, they all go down to Florida, But
yeah, I mean, the snowbird action is you leave the snow and then come back for the warm weather. Yes. I just want to. No problem.
Thank you for mansplaining that to me.
Yeah, no problem.
So we just stopped, and I was doing management, and Carol said, I'm sick of musicians. I've had enough of them. I'm going back to... She had been a dancer previously. She'd trained and studied and got her BFA, and she went back to do Pilates, and now is a lead... I mean, not to put too fine a point on it, one of the leading practitioners of Stop Pilates in the world. I mean, they sent her to China to run huge...
Wow.
So, yeah, no, she's really good. And I fell into teaching because I was
going to ask you about that.
I was at EMO, which was Boston's version of South by Southwest, and ran into an old friend I used to drink with down in Kent called John Lay, who had been Squeeze's manager and Robin Hitchcock's manager. And it's like, hey, fucking hell, what are you doing here? I haven't seen you in years. He said, I married somebody. I live down in Plymouth and I'm teaching at a college. So I picked myself up off the floor. I said, what? You're an idiot. He said, I am. But the biggest major, it was one calls an applied arts college. People were studying graphic design, photography, radio, music engineering, So he said, yeah, there's a class they all take called Survey of the Music Industry. And he said, I just stand there telling stories and they love it. And I said, I could do that. He said, yes, you could. So introduced me to the dean. And he said, lovely, I'll come in and teach a class. That was in 2000. And it went really well, got great reviews. I said, I'd love to do more. He said, yeah, great. I said, okay, January what? He said, no, we only have adjuncts until, in the fall. So come back next September. It's like, oh, God. So I did go back, and then that turned up with me, instead of teaching 2 classes, teaching 4 or 5, because somebody had left from the English department, and the head of that side of things was looking, and I went over and says, hello, I hear you need an English teacher. She said, yes. I said, well, I'm English and I'm a teacher.
Ergo, I can teach an English class.
So, she laughed and said, okay. And I just went from there, and they offered me a full-time job running the freshman seminar program.
Wait a minute, are you like a real professor or a fake professor like me?
No.
You're a real professor?
Yeah, they said, and they offered me the full-time gig and said, well, you've only got a bachelor's. We want you to get a master's. And I said, I'll do that, but I want you to pay for it.
Wait a minute. Said, okay. I have a master's and I'm still a fake professor.
Well, let me you let me finish.
All right, I'm going to let you
finish. So I got my master's, which was delayed because of the 2005 reunion, but I was running this whole program for them, and it was going really well. Finished my master's, and then I was in, and I was there for 16 years. I finished up as dean of students, but halfway through that, I started teaching as an adjunct here at Endicott College up on the North Shore above Boston. And I got a full-time job finally because my position does not require a PhD. It requires a master's or more because I am the internship professor for the Visual and Performing Arts School. Okay. So I teach classes, but my whole thing is around the internship program, which is a very significant and successful part of Endicott College. So, yeah, I almost got a PhD at one point, and I was just like, I'm in my late 50s or early.
You're like, am I trying to go back to school?
Like, really? I want to go through all this.
And being educated really never did anybody any good. Let's be honest. I mean, for fuck's sake. You know what I mean? Really? I mean, come on. What the fuck?
Yeah. I would say that with the many really great teachers at this school, simply having a PhD is no determination of whether or not you're a good teacher.
Yeah.
So anyway, so that's how I ended up. And I do have rank. Here's my card. What am I? I'm assistant professor of experiential learning.
Ain't you nothing? All right, yeah. Whatever. I'm an adjunct. I'm just an adjunct.
But I ask you, through all of that, the music never leaves you, right? Isn't the desire? Do you still have that desire to play?
Well, yeah. I mean, I hadn't for years because I'd never considered myself a particularly good drummer. I'm not good at all the rudiments, and I can't read. I mean, I can read music, but I can't read drum scores and everything. It's just like, But I love it, and we will continue with our current lineup.
Good.
Next summer. We'll all be in England because John can't leave the country for a while. Nothing legal. He's got family stuff that he can't travel for a long time. So we'll go there. We'll base ourselves there for a couple of months. We'll write and record and rehearse and go off, do little guerrilla things, play a festival here, a couple of dates there, just like that, and take a time and have a nice summer because my new contract here allows me to work remotely during the summer.
Nice. How come no one has done a punk version yet of "Can't Trust It" for Liz Truss? I mean, I think you need to do that. It's screaming out cover, don't you think?
Don't. Oh God, it's so depressing.
I'm sorry.
It's depressing everywhere. Here, it's depressing.
Yeah, it's depressing everywhere.
Here's what I
just have better chocolate.
Ask you because I ask Amy this.
No, you don't. Oh, actually, you do. Some better chocolate.
I ask Amy this all of the time because I see so many different people coming up and trying to have punk museums and all of these people coming up and doing all of these things. But it always, to me, listen, I told Amy when I first met her, I was music director at my school station, so I knew certain names. Punk was not my lane. I knew Wendy O. Williams. I knew who the Slits were, and I absolutely...
He toured with the Slits.
And for me, how I kind of discovered Nina Hagen was from Nina Hagen Band, and that was punk to me, those first two albums that they put out before she went solo. So that was my punk extent. But when I see all of this stuff coming up now and all of these people, and I'm reading some of their synopsis, or like I sent Amy something about the Dead Kennedys the other day because she was there from the beginning, and it just seems like some of the things I'm hearing people say, I'm like, I don't know a lot.
I don't know a lot, but I know
that that's not right. So what do you feel about everybody coming up and trying to tell these punk stories? And some of them seem like, not to diss VH1, but it seems very like a VH1, Where Are You Now punk edition with
oh my God,
everybody going to Wikipedia for the information.
Yeah. I keep up or get out of the way. With technology, with social media and everything, it's just like, whatever. I mean, there are some lovely stories out there. There's some, three great books talking of Peter Hook. He wrote about the band and about the club and everything, a great trilogy of books he's written. I mean, some people write really well and interestingly. A lot of the stuff is awful. But what's really encouraging, certainly lately, is how many of us are still doing this. Right. I've always been not close, but friendly with Dave Wakeling from The Beat, or as you people say, The English Beat, who to this day tours 4, 5, 6 months of the year. His daughter is his tour manager. I mean, he's had hits, but then he keeps going and keeps going. And it's like, I said, some of us got lucky and we got on the telly and we lasted 3 years, 2 years, 5, 6 years. I said, you are the epitome of what we all dreamt about when we were 14, 15, watching Top of the Pops. You are a troubadour because you're still going out and playing and having a good time, making a living. You won. And there are others doing it, but he was the first one, and I really cottoned on to that whole dynamic. But I mean, the Pixies, even though they were latter day, but they continue to make new music, put out new records and tour. My God, they tour well and big. And the Psychedelic Furs, I mean, still making new records, still fabulous on stage.
I want to say they played here.
They just played
this year. Maybe was it over the summer at Pier 17? And I have a lot of friends who went to that show and loved it. Said it was great.
They're so good. I mean, Richard is one of the great frontmen of all time.
Oh, so good.
And a lovely man to boot. So, and a Killing Joke. They still tour. They still do it. They are still a ferocious force. So it's good. It's like it's not just old black guys playing the blues that can do it into their 60s and 70s, or the Rolling Stones into their, 90s now?
But they aged well.
Well, they have, really.
Well, to that end, I mean, New Order, they're not spring chickens. Pet Shop Boys are not spring chickens. The Bad Brains still play. They still tour. Bad Brains will get together every once in a while and play.
Bush Tetras still doing it, which is great. Bad Brains and Bush Tetras. That we did that. I don't know whether you probably weren't around at the time in New York. Was it New Year's Eve of 82 or 83?
Me, I came back to New York the day John Lennon died.
Oh, right.
Whenever that was, I was there. But not at that show.
We played. It was the Bush Tetras and Bad Brains opening for us at Roseland. I think it was the first rock bill at Roseland, and none of the promoters would touch it. So we did it ourselves with Ian Copeland, our agent, and I mean it was outrageous. It oversold by miles, but what a great show! I just remember the Bad Brains being really pissed off that they were lower down the bill than these women.
Well,
yeah.
I love that they're still out there. I love that the Bad Brains are still out there. And still pack the club to see them. It's great.
I love the Bad Brains. I love
really, it's great.
Dead Kennedys are touring again too.
Yes.
Well, we'll have that conversation offline. I have no problem with. I am not a fan of Biafra, having been around when they were around, and having been on the road with them.
Yeah, no, I get it, and I don't. I'm sort of being semi-facetious because there are a small number of people who said before we actually hit the road, it's not Gang of Four without Andy Gill, and I know that we shut them the fuck up. Because David Parho was so good, because when I just said, look, we want you to know all the parts. We want you to play those songs, but you're David Parho. You are the Gang of Four guitar player now. And he played them his way in the spirit of Andy. I mean, he completely got it. He didn't try to be like him on stage, but nobody walked away disappointed.
Everybody I know who saw the show said it was like minds blown, that it was like there was no thing of like, oh, here's a bunch of guys doing a reunion act as opposed to actually being a band. It was the same vibe, and so that's it's
lovely to hear that, because that's definitely how we felt at the end of it, that we succeeded, and it's why we're going to keep going.
Good.
No, when you have the right formula, especially hard, if you have to replace anybody in a band situation. It's like, look at who would have thought Queen would work after Freddie Mercury, right? They've had guest singers, but then you get an Adam Lambert who is a generational talent.
Oh,
and
God,
his vocals work with that band so well that you're like, fuck, okay, like this is actually really viable. You guys don't seem like you're just out here trying to be a nostalgia act. You are really present in this moment, and it's great.
And it, it's like we know that people aren't desperate to hear new music. We're not a nostalgia act, but we are playing old songs, but a couple of new ones. But we will write more. We're not going to have got an album coming. We're not going to be silly. It's the 21st century. We'll write songs and we'll throw them out there. And then when there's enough of them and we go out on tour again, maybe we'll put them together on a big disc and sell it at the merch table. But we're not kidding ourselves that people are champing at the bit for new Gang of Four music. But we're going to make it because we want to and because this is a fabulous collection of people to be creative with. So
except you don't know that they don't want it until you give it to them.
Yeah, I was going to say that
because
it's
if they're showing up to the shows, that doesn't mean, like, especially the way music is distributed these days, you know what I mean? You can put it out, get it online, you can press maybe vinyl and sell them at your shows. If people are still coming to your shows and there was a reception to that, who's to say they don't want great new music, you know?
Yeah, I'm, a certain degree of false modesty, but I mean, I hope people love it, and I hope we make, and I believe we will make stuff that will be good,
And it keeps you having new stuff to sing on the road. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yep.
It's always good to have new music to infuse into the show because I'm sure after a while it does get tired singing the same songs over and over and over again. You need to add some new blood into that just as musicians so that you're not bored doing the same thing.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Who are you listening to these days that you like? Just anybody?
I love Harry Styles.
Really? Who is he? I've never heard of him. Is he like some underground guy or something?
I think he was in that group.
I'm being shitting Jesus.
I think he was in what was that one? He's in that one what are those guys? The ones from South Korea.
Hugo. We haven't seen each other, but we do follow each other on social media. I am dripping in sarcasm right now.
I know, but your face was like, man, you sold it. You should be on stage.
I'm a teacher. I know how to lie in front of people.
Absolutely. I'm probably the only straight white man over 60 who's seen him 6 times, not on my own. It started with One Direction taking my daughter to the shows, and then when he did his first solo tour of theaters, not huge stadiums, which sold out in less than a second. Her mum was trying this, and I was, Toronto, New York, Boston, Chicago, everywhere we knew people. It's like, everything sold. And then I went, wait a minute. Austin, Texas. He's playing at Austin City Limits. My friend runs it and books it. I thought, I can't do this to him. I cannot reach out because everyone he knows with kids will be. So I thought, but they're an hour behind us. So I went there and it said, bang, and I got tickets. It was amazing. So then I called him and I said, Skippy, I said, so Harry Styles is playing at your thing. He said, yes. I said, I've got tickets. And he whooped over the phone. He's like, I just want you to know, I've got tickets. I said, the only thing I am asking for is I can be up in the Sad Dad's bar with you upstairs while my daughter and her friend are down on the floor. So that's what we did. And it was great. But because it was term time, Tessie was still at high school. So we got to do a visit at Texas State down in San Antonio, which has the greatest music theater program. I mean, I would love for her to have been accepted there, but run by an English woman, she takes 18 or 22 students a year. Oh. It's that ferocious. But meant she could get time off high school to go and see Harry Styles in Texas. It was great. That was a really good blag that I did for her. But so I think Harry Styles is fantastic. I think it's so
interesting how everybody across the board likes him, from punk rockers to black folks to gay folks to straight folks. He's hit that sweet spot of just
everything. He's everything. It's great music. Songs. It's great showmanship. A friend of mine got me I've told Courtney, a friend of mine got me a ticket. I forgot that she got me a ticket because I wasn't even going to try to ask. And then I got a concussion and I forgot about it.
Oh, no.
But that's all right. I saw Pet Shop Boys.
When we were first watching them on TV and everything, I just said to Tessie, okay, he's the one who's going to break out. She said, well, I'm not sure. I think it might be Niall. I said, no. He looks like a mixture of a young Mick Jagger meets Mickey Dolenz. I said, there's an X Factor funnily enough, right there. And I was right. Daddy was right.
There you go. There you go. Sign him. Oh, oops, he's already signed.
Yeah.
Who else? Anybody else other than the underground artists? The obscure underground artists?
I'm not great on obscure and underground.
I was being facetious. I'm referring again to Harry Styles. Keep up. Keep it.
Yeah, God.
I know you live in a backwater town and a backwater state, and you can't keep up with us here, but
Bitch.
Kind of sort of, she is.
I listen to a lot of old stuff. I listen to Youth from Killing Joke does every week on Mixcloud. He does these great long mixes of different songs and things, and I listen to those a lot. I'm now listening to REM 3 specific songs because there's a show in Athens and Atlanta in December put together by a whole bunch, the Black Crows and a bunch of other people, Indigo Girls and Pylon and things doing to celebrate the 40th anniversary of Memeber. And they've asked me to come and play.
Nice.
Asked me, so I'm playing a song with the Indigo Girls. I'm playing a song with somebody I've not heard of. And I'm playing their version of Academy Fight Song with Pylon Reenactment Society. So
wow, Pylon was so good.
God, and they well, it's just Vanessa with other people, but they're an ongoing concern. They call themselves Pylon Reenactment Society. They opened for us in Atlanta in March on the tour, and it was so good to have them. It's just dear friends, just lovely.
Court, what are you listening to this week? Courtney prefaces everything we should warn you with for some reason.
And I'm telling you right now, really, for some reason, I don't know if I was feeling extra homosexual this weekend. I pulled out Donna Summer's Bad Girls album.
Oh, you were feeling extra homosexual
and
this
played
weekend.
that album all weekend, front to back, just twirling around my house. I don't know. I just went through a whole Donna Summer moment, and it just has been great.
Haven't we all, from time to time?
And you know what it is about her? It's that voice. It's like no one could say. She had such a beautiful, rich, full voice. When she sang softly, it was strong. When she sang big, it was strong.
And no one has ever come near her. No one has ever. You can see a lot of other singers no one is even like attempting what she did.
First time I really heard Donna Summer, I was probably in my year between high school and university. I was working at Harvey Nichols, which is the sort of mini Harrods in Knightsbridge, because my dad was in the rag trade, and he sold to them all, so he got me a job there, and I was working in the record department up on the 3rd floor next to ladies' underwear or something. And the two women that ran it, who I didn't know at the time or I didn't cotton on, were a couple. All they played was fucking Donna Summer. And I was like, this is, I'm punk rock. It's just, but being steeped in it, I suddenly realized this is great. I love this. So, that's when I first got really exposed. I've been actually also listening to, I do this occasional radio show here on the college with a member of faculty who runs the radio department and a young sophomore woman who's a complete music fiend. And we bring songs. We bring 3 songs a show, and the last she's 19 or something, hasn't heard a lot of stuff, and not particularly. I haven't listened to a lot of female singers, so I've been going through. I'm finding dusty songs to share, and who's the other one? I love
Dusty Springfield.
Oh, please!
They were playing the Springfields last night at Carbone. I went to Carbone for dinner, and literally they were playing the Springfields in there last night.
Yeah,
that's another voice that honestly,
and never been matched.
No one sounded like that. No one.
I mean, a lot of people have done the song "Breakfast in Bed," and hers is the best, closely followed by a reggae version by Lorna Bennett.
Oh, that's a great version. That version, yeah,
fantastic.
That's a really great. I've been what have I listening to? I've been really listening to a lot of old Mary J. Blige. I was listening to No More Drama a lot, just because I like to go back. And I've been listening to a lot of replacements, and especially I have this really weird emotional connection to Don't Tell a Soul, which is not the Cool album, only because I was pregnant. I don't know why I always say with Lucian, because I only have one kid, but I was pregnant, and We Will Inherit the Earth. I felt like that was my song for motherhood, which of course is bullshit. And I interviewed, I had interviewed the Replacements. Did you ever work with the Replacements at all, or deal with them in any sort of way? Yeah,
I didn't really get them. It's like I don't really get Radiohead, and people look at me like I'm from Mars or something.
I understand the not getting Radiohead. I don't understand the not getting.
They've had a song or two.
They've had a song or two.
Someone to explain to me why.
I can explain it to you because everybody got into groupthink about it. Everybody got. I mean, there's Radiohead have done a couple things, but I will give $100 to if I can find 5 people who actively listen to Kid A. They do not. They say they do. Nobody listens to that record. They just like to drop it at cocktail party. Oh yeah, I listen to Kid A. No, you don't. They probably don't even listen to it. You do not listen to Kid A. Just end of story.
I think
replacements are very American in a lot of ways. I think it's a kind of very of Midwesty American thing that
I will say that.
I mean, it's one thing. It's one thing. I mean, we had reputation of being really heavy drinkers, but for the most part, not falling over drunk on stage. Well, 3 of us wouldn't. But
you had a drum kit in front of you to stop you.
Fuck you. But then I'd fall over backwards,
Oh yeah, good point.
And which is a long way to go when you're on a riser. The other singer since I discovered Judy Henske, an old folk singer who has the most amazing voice, and I discovered her through reading books by. He died last year. Oh God, now I'm going to remember his name. Andrew begins with a V. Andrew Vachss. Vachss.
The guy with the eye patch?
Yeah, the guy with the eye patch. Amazing books. And his main character listens to Judy Henske while he's driving. And I just kept reading. I thought, I've got to find this. And you couldn't find anything. I mean, on Spotify now, but, 15, 20 odd years ago when I was first reading him, I couldn't find it anywhere. She was signed to A&M, I think. But nothing was available. But eventually I found stuff. She's got a fantastic voice. Oh, my God. High Flying Bird is my favorite song. I'm going to play that on the radio station in a couple of weeks. Just get these youngsters to hear some good old stuff. You know what I mean?
That's the best part about that is giving young people like just a roadmap. Like, I know you know these 5 artists, but I need you to look at who influenced these 5 artists. Here.
When I was teaching the music classes at that first college, the first class of every semester, I'd just walk in, I had it all set up. I wouldn't speak, I'd just stand there and I'd play Papa Was a Rolling Stone. Because the first 3 minutes are just doo-dum, doo-dum, doo-dum. I mean, no machine. And I just explained, so at the end of it, I just said, that song makes the hair on my neck stand up. And your first assignment is to go out and write about the first song or artist that made you go, ugh, that made you think you want to be here studying this. And I just, you can't know where you're going. You can't know where you're going unless you know about where you've been. But I always thought, my daughter's growing up, I can't wait to introduce her to Bowie and I can't wait to introduce her to this. And it's like, I realized, no, she'll develop her own stuff. And I learned as much from, I really got back into listening to and understanding pop music with her because, there were sort of 6 years I was not allowed to control the car radio. So I heard a lot of stuff I otherwise wouldn't have done. So that was really good. Yeah,
it was the same. I remember when Lucian was little. I remember once walking into his room, he's blasting some music, some, rap, and I said something like, "Oh, who's this?" And he turns to me and goes, "It's your job to know who it is."
Ooh. Yeah.
So you see, it comes naturally, Hugo. We can't help it. It's a New York thing. It comes naturally. Is there anything you feel like promoting? Is there anything like your radio show you want us to?
No, it's a campus show. The REM Murmur 40th anniversary. I mean, Athens is sold out already. I don't know about Atlanta, but that should be a lot of fun. I don't know. What I would like to promote
How
is
about the
people
box set? Is it still available?
sold out in a month.
Wow.
I wish we'd made more.
Again.
Wow.
Okay, you being that modest, you're like, I don't know, but they want something new from us. I'm like, oh, do you have the box set? Well, that kind of sold out in a month. How was the shows? Well,
Yeah, it was okay.
we kind of sold out a bunch of them, and then we just
it
sell
was
out
all
all the merch
right.
and things.
I mean,
but I
it was
don't know if
better than-
anybody would actually, want something new. I was like, I think they want what you're giving.
Yeah.
And I get that. It's scary thinking about new music when you've been around for a really long time and the legacy of things. But it seems like
He was 12 when I saw them in Gang of Four, too. It was like he was the Harley Flanagan of post-punk. He's just up there drumming away.
But I love that. That makes me so happy. As someone who worked in the music industry for a really long time, I think that the hardest part for me was seeing the people who really wanted it and then didn't get it in certain ways. And they've stopped even making music. They've gone on. Like, the experience really took them out, and then they've just gone on to just have other careers, and they've left that thing that they love behind. So I always feel like if you are blessed enough to be able to have decades in it, it's like, don't ever make yourself a nostalgia act, because people will always pay and want to hear the old things. I'm like, it's okay to be like, we're still alive, we're still creating, because I don't ever feel like that part dies, And it's like, you should be able to say, I want to create.
It can go dormant for a while, because, we all go through different stages. I mean, whether you're having kids or moved away or whatever, I'll go back to, I'm very fortunate that I'm still really good friends and love John and Sarah, and now with David in the fold, it's great. And I love Dave Allen too. He's still a dear friend. He's just not playing with us anymore.
Well, that means, Amy, the next time they're here in New York, we have to go to the show.
Oh yeah, well, I didn't go. I think Parker asked me if I wanted to go. Our mutual friend Parker, and I think that was at the height of like scary monster COVID stuff. I was not,
leading up to it, we didn't know, but then it cleared up. By which time it had sold out. No, Parker, another teacher.
Yeah,
like Cindy from Bush Tetras, teacher in the New York system. There's of the many regrets I have, one of them was definitely when Certain General were starting. Marcy and Parker, but Marcy first said, would you produce our first record? And I was such an idiot, because I said, oh no, I don't think I could do that. I don't think I'm good enough. And I was such an idiot, because I should have done. But I just didn't have that self-confidence. I mean, Andy Gill had a good career as a producer. And I thought, things would have changed. But I wish, even if I'd only ever done that one, because I thought they were really good. As I told you earlier, Marcy is one of my great loves to this day. Whatever. Never miss an opportunity to miss an opportunity.
And on that,
climb every other mountain, Hugo.
That is the
climbing
perfect place to leave it. You know what I'm saying? That's the perfect place to leave it. Thank you so much for coming on, Hugo. And you guys, know what it is. I'm gonna let you finish. Oh, first of all, people, if you don't know Gang of Four, you're all walking around with computers in your pocket. And everybody seems to listen to their music from tech companies that tell us that they're music companies. So go to your whichever service you use, go into that search bar, type in Gang of Four, and get your whole life. And because I know you're all on YouTube and Pornhub, when you're taking a break from the Pornhub, go to YouTube and type in Gang of Four and see them where you can actually visually see.
Well, except that if Gang of Four comes up on Pornhub, that's a whole other conversation. Other conversation.
Yeah, and please type it in with just your left hand. If
just your left hand. So you know what it is. Thank you for listening. You're hearing us on the Pantheon Podcast Network, where there are over 75 fabulous and fascinating music shows, including us, the fuckery of us. Thank you. And you know the deal. Leave us a message on our Facebook at ImmaLetYouFinish, all one word. Or on Twitter at FinishImma. I still fucking hate that word. Amy, it doesn't mind us so much anymore.
I meditate.
I let you know what I'm saying? She does yoga and shit. It works for her.
I let things go.
And you know the deal. Tell a friend. We'll be back next week. Remember to listen next week. We love you, and we'll see you next week. Till next week.
Bye. Go Yankees.
It's NFL draft season, and that means it's time to start thinking about fantasy football. FantasyPoints.com features industry-leading experts and prognosticators using proprietary hand-charted data to help you score more fantasy points. FantasyPoints.com is the place to go for whatever kind of fantasy football you play. Whether you play fantasy football, daily fantasy sports, or do a little bit of everything, Fantasy Points has the meticulously researched content to guide you to victory. And why wait for the fall? Fantasy Points also covers the new spring football league, the UFL. Join the guru, John Hansen, Scott Barrett, Joe Dolan, and other massive names in the fantasy football universe with an exclusive offer. Use code Pantheon for 15% off any Fantasy Points package, including the all-in package, with access to every article, tool, and data nugget that Fantasy Points has to offer. That's FantasyPoints.com and code Pantheon for 15% off at Fantasy Points. FantasyPoints.com, code Pantheon. Score more fantasy points.